Welcome to Brief by Beat, and today we are going to talk about the altercation that occurred between Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny on the subway in New York.
24-year-old rider allegedly holding Jordan Neely in a chokehold has now been identified as Daniel J. Penny.
Here's the thing, guys. This situation is complicated. I know people don't want it to be complicated, but it is. But it's very clear that people don't want it to be complicated because then they run immediately to the nearest partisan hacks for their takes on it. That's why we have this insane dialogue that's happening in the media right now, where one side is saying that Daniel Penny, the man who choked Jordan Neely, is a murderer, and we have one side saying that he's a hero. Of course, it's not either of those two things, and we have to dig in deeper. But the right wing, they want to focus on what his arrest record was, the fact that he's been arrested 40-something times before, and that he had unprovoked violent attacks in his recent past. And the left wing wants to focus on this.
Jordan Neely, he was a Michael Jackson impersonator at one time.
Also tonight, we're getting a closer look at the man who died. His name, Jordan Neely. The Manhattan Borough President, Mark Levine, tweeting this video saying he often saw Neely perform on the subway, dancing and impersonating Michael Jackson.
Neely was a subway busker and Michael Jackson impersonator.
The fact that he was a Michael Jackson impersonator is useless to this story. It has no bearing on what happened on the subway that day. They're just continually showing this footage of him being a Michael Jackson impersonator so that they can pollute the story. In 6 months' time, there are going to be people who think that he was in the middle of impersonating Michael Jackson and Daniel Penny came up behind him unprovoked and choked him out. That's what happens when the media does shit like this and they convolute the story with horse shit. What's the point of this? To make it seem like somebody who used to be a Michael Jackson impersonator could not become a threat to the public? Michael Jackson was Michael Jackson, and he became a threat to the public.
I have slept in a bed with many children. I sleep in the bed with all of them.
Let's talk about what happened on the subway that day. We do not need to get into Jordan Neely's past. We'll talk about that in a bit. But for what happened in the moment, Jordan Neely's past is irrelevant because it didn't necessarily influence in any way anybody's actions on the train because they were unaware of it. So they wouldn't be able to use that as a reason for what they did or how they acted. But let's just talk about what he did. Jordan Neely walked onto a subway, said, "I'm hungry, I'm tired, I don't care if I die, and I don't care if I go to jail." Now, get all the background noise out of your head about your own preconceived idea of what happened that day and what other people have speculated and influenced you to think happened that day, and just put yourself in the position of sitting on a subway train and a guy walks in and says, "I'm hungry, I'm tired, I don't care if I die, I don't care if I go to jail." Do you think his next step is to do something reasonable? No, that is a very unsettling string of sentences that makes you think his next actions might be violent. So were people on the train scared? Did they fear for their safety? Well, let's see what this guy says.
And remember, others who were on that subway have already come out and said, Mr. Neely posed no threat. He seemed to be having a bad day. He was in his feelings, but he was in his own world. He was not a threat to anybody on that subway. Okay?
Okay. So others on the train said that he wasn't a danger and that he was no threat to them whatsoever. And we know that what you're saying is true because you said it, not because you used any evidence to back it up, that you have any of these eyewitnesses being actually interviewed or confirmed sources. You're just saying they said it, so it must be true. And it'd be crazy, though, if maybe we had an actual eyewitness account where somebody said that people on the train were afraid.
This is Juan Alberto Vasquez, an independent journalist who was in the subway car and filmed the fatal chokehold. He's speaking to NBC News.
The man got on the subway car and began to say a somewhat aggressive speech, saying that he was hungry, he was thirsty, and he didn't care about anything. He didn't care about going to jail, that he didn't care that he gets a big life sentence, and it doesn't matter if he died. If there was fear, the people who were bluish or who were there, where he separated everything, moved from their place. I stayed sitting in my place because it was a little further away. But obviously those moments, well, one thinks fear, one thinks he may be armed.
Again, we don't even have to get into Jordan Neely's past because the people on the train didn't know his past at the time. But what we do know is that random assaults and violence have drastically increased on public transit in all major cities. So every time you step onto one of these trains, there's a cloud looming over of something happening. Then when somebody walks on and begins acting erratically and saying things that you find troublesome, like I don't care if I die or I don't care if I go to jail, it is natural to be afraid at this point in time. But some people don't even think that that's acceptable.
Anybody who has been on a big subway, New York City subway system, or other cities, Chicago, there are people who are having mental health issues all the time. There are people who are babbling. There are people who are saying crazy stuff. There are even some people who will yell at you. But it's your job as an American who respects other people's rights to say, you know what? They're speaking out their mind. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're having a health crisis. I'm just gonna mind my own business.
Fuck that guy. That guy is a gigantic piece of shit. If somebody comes up to you and screams in your face, is acting erratically, says, I don't care if I die or if I go to jail, it is not your duty as an American to respect his rights. What you should do, this should always be your first step, is get away. Get as far away from that person as possible. However, it's really hard to do that when you're in a steel can that's in motion, submerged under the earth. This guy is coming across as somebody who doesn't ride the subway very often. Or at all. That's what most of these talking heads are coming off as. They don't really understand what's happening down there. In New York, one of the worst cities for it, but even in the city I live in Toronto, there's people being shoved on the tracks, there's random assaults and stabbings. It's happening. So the general public is afraid. We are on edge. So your whole, just, go about your day and he's just having a moment, that fucking shit doesn't work. It doesn't apply to this scenario. Okay, so now let's talk about Jordan Neely's past. He was arrested over 40 times. And not all just for turnstile jumping and petty larceny. He also had some pretty serious shit that he did, like he tried to abduct a child. What kind of person would try to abduct a child? He also punched a 67-year-old woman and broke her orbital bone on the subway. I already agree with the point that the people on the train did not know Jordan Neely's past, therefore that wasn't in some sort of influence on what their behavior was in that moment. But I also think that I've made a pretty strong case for the fact that people are on high alert and afraid on public transit. But the point is that you guys are talking about it as if they had no idea that they were in danger, but you know that they were. They were actually in danger. There was a guy on the train saying he didn't care if he died or went to jail who had in the past randomly assaulted people. And why do you not care that he did that? Why does it not matter that he broke a 67-year-old woman's orbital bone? Why is that not relevant? Well, because for you, it doesn't go with the narrative that you're trying to push. So now we're in the aftermath, and Daniel Penny put out this statement through his lawyers.
The law firm representing Daniel Penny released a statement Friday expressing, quote, condolences to those close to Mr. Neely and adding, quote, Mr. Neely had a documented history of violent and erratic behavior, the apparent result of ongoing and untreated mental illness. When Mr. Neely began aggressively threatening Daniel Penny and the other passengers, Daniel, with the help of others, acted to protect themselves until help arrived. Daniel never intended to harm Mr. Neely and could not have foreseen his untimely death, the law firm said.
Jordan Neely's family put out this statement through their lawyers.
Representatives for Jordan Neely's family responded Monday, calling the statement, quote, not an apology nor an expression of regret. It's a character assassination. They continued, quote, the truth is he knew nothing about Jordan's history when he intentionally wrapped his arms around Jordan's neck and squeezed and kept squeezing. He never attempted to help him at all. In short, his actions on the train and now his words show why he needs to be in prison.
His family said that Daniel Penny didn't try to help him at all. Look, I don't want to beat up on this family, but it's your job to help him. And we do know that they did try to help him in different ways. Jordan Neely often stayed at his grandparents' house, but they also would not let him stay there at night because they feared him because he was erratic and violent. So I'm not going to judge them because I understand. Look, man, people have people in their families that they try to help for years and just can't. They can't do it, so they throw their hands up. But expecting Daniel Penny to be the one to help in this scenario, knowing this guy's past, again, you know his past, is kind of fucked up. Also, they said that his statement didn't sound like an apology or regret. Well, yeah, there is an impending criminal trial coming and definitely a civil lawsuit coming from you, the family, so he can't admit in public regret or apologize because that will be able to be used against him in a court of law. That's the way the system works. There is a thing called due process. I know some people want to skip that step, but it exists for a reason. That's why AOC's tweet where she called Daniel Penny a murderer is abhorrent and reckless. I understand that we're supposed to love AOC because she's progressive and she's on Instagram and Twitter and all this shit and we love her and blah, 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 and she goes after the billionaires and cares about the environment. I understand all that, but this is a bad take. This is a take from an idiot on Twitter. You see, no one can dispute that Daniel Penny killed Jordan Neely. He is responsible for Jordan Neely's death. However, murder is something that can only be attributed after due process. The defense presents its case, the prosecution presents its case, and then a jury of his peers decides whether or not he committed murder. AOC is a representative of the state. She should be able to know what murder is, what it means, and how it's allocated in these cases. Her just flying off the handle an hour after she saw a video is fucking gross.
Sad that Governor Hochul and Mayor Eric Adams couldn't declare what it was, a crime, a murder. The medical examiner's report came back and nothing's been done.
It's not like AOC doesn't understand what being afraid in an uncertain situation feels like.
She hid inside a bathroom within her inner office.
Like this. Like I'm here, and the bathroom door starts going like this. Like the bathroom door's behind me, or rather in front of me, and I'm like this, and the door hinges right here. And I just hear, where is she? Where is she? And this was the moment where I thought everything was over. I thought I was going to die.
That was AOC describing what she went through on January 6th at the Capitol. A lot of people said that she was acting very melodramatic, overreacting in that scenario. I don't think she was. I think a lot of people hate AOC and they were at the Capitol that day. But the people who said that she was overreacting, she didn't respond to that well. She didn't say, oh yeah, you're right, I was overreacting. She was like, you weren't there, you don't know. That's the point, AOC. You should be able to extend that sympathy to the people on this train and not go half-cocked on Twitter just to try to score some political points. A lot of stuff is being thrown around about Daniel Penny. One is that he overreacted and people on the train weren't actually that afraid. Well, in the video you can see two other passengers helping him restrain Jordan Neely. Isn't that a little bit of an indication that maybe other people were afraid? You know, they also are calling him racist out of nowhere. And one of the guys helping him restrain Jordan Neely was black. So surely race wouldn't have been his motivation. This situation is fucked. It cannot be unfucked. It's been spun, it's gone viral, everybody has their opinions, they are not going to change their minds. But what is it going to take for one of these videos to come out and us not to rush to judgment? Is it going to take that everybody on planet Earth has to at one point in time have an embarrassing, out of context video of theirs go viral so that they can see, holy shit, people just see this stuff and they get it absolutely wrong. They have no idea what was going on in that situation. Because there's a lot that happens before people hit record, and there's a lot that happens after people hit stop. So we need to take a breath with these situations and wait for the information to come in. And for all the protesters and politicians screaming, no justice, no peace, yeah man, why don't you wait for the justice to actually take place? It's a little slow moving. If you want this guy arrested, tried, and put in jail less than a week after he did this, you're not talking about justice. You're talking about something else.
Lock them all up.